ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the foothills of Mount Lofty in southern Australia, some of the most beautiful country on God's earth, natural country for farming. And today I'm with Peter Manuel, who's been farming here for many years. I'm going to ask him about that in a moment. And Peter is the founder and executive director of the Farmers and Landowners Action Group of Australia, an independent lobby group speaking up for farmers who are facing a variety of attacks, it's fair to say, from various government agencies trying to stop them doing their job. Now, Peter, how long have you been farming here? And tell us a bit about what farming it is that you do.
Well, this particular spot here, I've got a Pole Hereford. It's a beef cattle stud, and I've been breeding beef cattle now for 25 years. We've been a stud since 1996, and this particular spot where we are, I'm leasing at the moment. Our property is next door, similar country to this, and I am very, very concerned, alongside a lot of other food producers, on how our right to farm and produce a critical need, food, is essentially being taken away from us.
Now, behind us here we've got some very fine Pole Hereford bulls.
Yes.
Now, to me, as a Brit, when we see these bulls and cows in the field, of course they've got their very distinctive white faces, and most of the rest of them is brown. But the question is this: one notices that their faces are much dirtier here than they are in Britain. Is that because you get less rain?
Oh, for sure. If we got a good shower of rain tonight, heavy rain, in the morning they'd be looking a little bit cleaner.
So they would look a bit more like the UK ones?
Yeah, well, if you're out in the paddock all day and you're sucking dust and all the rest of it, you'd be looking a bit dirty. So if you had a shower, you'd come up looking all right.
Now that raises an interesting question, which is, how do you make sure all the way through the year, including the months of drought in which we are at the moment, how do you make sure there's enough water for the cattle?
Well, the whole point of the thing is, I mean, we don't know what the seasons are going to do.
Of course.
So naturally, we've got to have, you know, our bores, and if you haven't got bores, we've got to have sizable dams.
Right.
To make sure that when it does rain, we collect enough water to be able to water our stock, which in turn feed the people. Now, you know, this is where properties have got to be, and I don't like using the word sustainable, because the other side seems to use that, but we have to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be sustainable with the water restrictions they're putting on us.
Now, what I'd like to do is to move on to those restrictions, because this is something that worries me. I know, as a farmer's son myself, that it is vital that you make sure that there's always water supply for the cattle. Now, in Scotland, that's easy. You don't even have to pray for rain. The good Lord gives it to you in unduly large quantities virtually all times of year. Yeah. Here it's not like that. So what kind of restrictions are you now suffering?
Well, this Natural Resource Management Board want us to put low flow bypasses in our dam. Now, us food producers call them no flow bypasses. Because essentially that's what's going to happen. When it does rain, we are not going to get the water in our dams.
Now, just to get this clear, what happens is that if there's a sort of modest amount of rainfall, then the rainfall, instead of accumulating in the dam, will tend to flow over this sill and plunge straight down onto somebody else's land, and you won't get the benefit of it here.
Well, no, the point is it's supposedly letting water to the environment.
Yes.
But we are already letting water to the environment without these low flow bypasses, because we've got our overflows on our dams.
Yes.
And water sitting in a dam, full stop, is always seeping into the subsoil.
And I was down looking at the Murray River, which is below us here. It's quite it is in fact a major river, isn't it, by the time it gets to the sea? Now, if I'm right in remembering, that river is now pretty full of water, even though we're in the drought season. Well, and now this wouldn't always be the case, I realise, but it is at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, and bear in mind that we're going to get a lot of water coming down from Queensland and New South Wales,
because that all makes its way for thousands of miles through what's called the Murray-Darling system.
That's it. Now,
am I right in remembering that there's a fellow called Tim Flannery, who is your chief climate commissar, I believe. He's paid, I think, $180,000 a year for 3 days a week, making up stuff about the climate. Did he not say that there was going to be no water ever again in the Murray-Darling system because of climate change?
Well, he's allegedly said a lot of things. He allegedly said that in 2010, 2011, the eastern states wouldn't get any rain. look what we got. We got flooding.
If I remember rightly, you had one of the biggest floods on the Brisbane River there'd been since 1860 when records began.
Exactly.
So that water makes its way all the way down southward.
Yes.
Towards the Murray River
That's
here,
correct.
and then eventually flows out into the sea not far from Adelaide. And so the existence then of agricultural dams all the way along this system is really very interesting, because you would expect that if that was the case, then Tim Flannery might be right, and therefore the river would be very low at the moment. Can you tell me the state of the river just as it is now?
I think if people went for a drive and had a look at the River Murray,
Yeah.
I think they'd be quite surprised on the amount of water in there. And I also would like to say too, with this water that's going to the environment from our dams, we've actually got too much fresh water going out to sea, ruining our seagrass. So wouldn't it be common sense, if you're concerned about the environment, to capture this water to help the environment, so we're not ruining the seagrass out there at sea, and capture more water so we can water our stock, which in turn feed the people. And on that note, I would like to say about our security. We talk about border security. Well, there's nothing more important than food security, because if we haven't got food to supply to the people here in South Australia and hopefully the export market, and mind you, it's a license to print money because the world wants our clean, pristine food product. If we get to the stage where we're relying on people, other countries, to supply us with food, that puts us in a very dangerous and vulnerable situation.
I agree with that very much, obviously. I mean, it's daft if they start moving against the farmers in various ways. Before we get on to some of the things that they're doing to you and your neighbours, just a little bit of background. I was speaking to Senator John Madigan the other day from Ballarat, not that far from here, and he's a very interesting man. He's a blacksmith by trade.
Right.
And he said, just like you, he said exactly the same thing. He goes around and listens to the farmers. I've seen him talking to the farmers, and they're all worried in his patch, same as you are here, about the same concerns about bureaucratic control stopping you getting on with your job of producing food, and not in this way, in any way, benefiting the environment, these people, when they put these regulations on. And he said, I can't understand, he said, why they let all that water out and top up the ocean. He said he has a lovely phrase, topping up the ocean,
yeah,
when we could be keeping the water here where it could do some good. So before we get on to some of these details, can I just ask you one question? I better explain first of all that the bureaucratic body that you mentioned a few moments earlier, which is the Natural Resources Management Board for the state of South Australia, that was brought into being, wasn't it, by an Act of 2004, which is many hundreds of pages long,
yes,
imposing savage restrictions and fines on anyone who even steps a little bit out of line. Can I just remind myself of what the fines are? For instance, if you saw that part of your creek was silting up and you decided, for the sake of making sure that its flow down to properties below you was maintained, you cleared that out, but you didn't ask for permission from the bureaucrats before you did it. How much could that cost you? A, as a corporate entity,
yeah,
and B, as a natural person.
Right. Well, as a natural person, you're looking at a $35,000 fine.
$35,000 just for clearing a bit of silt out of your creek.
But bear in mind that this government wanted to change that to $700,000, and if you're a body corporate, it is $70,000, and they wanted to change that to $2.2 million.
So this is really savage.
Oh.
Why this savagery?
Well, the whole point of the thing is, I've come to the conclusion now where they don't want a food bowl.
They want to have this as a desert.
I think they want our properties to be one big national park, to be quite honest. They don't want us owning private land. And is this something to do with the Agenda 21?
Now let's talk about Agenda 21. Again, just a little briefing for the viewers. Agenda 21 is a 40-chapter document. Again, they love long documents, these people who want to regulate the environment. And this document says that nature should be put in front of man, that the world's population should be reduced from its present 7 billion to as little as 300 million, that there should be no commercial farming such as yours at all, and your Natural Resources Management Board seems to be doing its best to make sure that they put that into effect here, that all irrigation should be forbidden, and again the restrictions you're mentioning and the huge fines are clearly designed to achieve that objective of Agenda 21, and also that population human population should be confined in what I can only describe as concentration camps, so that the vast majority of the Earth's land surface would be places where humankind would not be allowed to go at all under any circumstances. Do you get the feeling that this is beginning to happen to you here already, that the Natural Resources Management Board is not putting Australia first, is not putting the food supply first, it is putting Agenda 21 first, an alien and foreign system of controlling the environment, when frankly your own government, if only it pulled its socks up, could govern the environment perfectly sensibly without the aid of this alien intrusion from outside?
Oh, you said it very well. I'd just like to say to you, Lord Monckton, please look around. What are we doing wrong? What are we doing wrong?
Well, I have spent quite a lot of time on farms in my life. I see stock in extremely good heart. I've got to know some of these bulls intimately because we've been moving them from one field to another to make sure they've got plenty of feed. They are very fine animals. Some of them are weighing, what, 1,200 kilos? I mean, these are
heaviest one there will be 1,200 kilos.
Solid beasts. And these are fetching, I think, very high prices at the market when you can bear to part with them and sell them.
Well, these are stud bulls,
yeah,
and you would hope to get a reasonable price. Commercial cattle at the moment are down, as in sheep prices, which is an absolute shame.
Yeah.
And it's a situation where when you've been involved all your life and you work your guts out,
yeah,
to build up your herd, get your genetics and all the rest of it, and believe me, it takes years.
Oh yeah.
To think that this environmental movement wants to destroy us, it is just absolutely ridiculous.
And what is interesting is looking at your management of the land here. All about us there are trees. There are gum trees over here, there are eucalypts just about everywhere. There are 600 species of eucalypt in Australia, so you're not short of them.
Exactly.
And all of these trees are doing fine. You're planting more trees around the house. You're managing the land sensibly, it's properly fenced, the stock are properly looked after, they're fed and watered, you take trouble. And I know that some of your neighbours are doing exactly the same. There's a guy 95 years old just down the road from here, who is looking after his cattle every day, milking the cows and so forth. And when I see this kind of beneficial activity going on in what is otherwise marginally desert land, I think it's remarkable that you can farm it at all. And of course you only farm it by being very careful with your water supply. You have your little dam to give you just enough water to see you through a couple of seasons of drought. You have, for the house, I notice you have an enormous water tank above the house. You have another collection tank below. And what you're drinking, and what I've been drinking for the last few days, and I haven't died of it yet, is rainwater off the roof. Exactly. And all that 21,000 gallon tank that you've got above the house, that which feeds the pressure system in the house by gravity, that is fed entirely by rainwater from your own roof. Now, this is conservation, this is environmental responsibility of a very high order. I see you planting oak trees along your drive, which of course are indigenous here as they are in many other parts of the world, and you have to water them every night until they take and become strong enough. That's a lot of work. So a lot of work is going on here just to maintain the beauty of what is already here and to preserve it through the years of drought, to prevent the bushfires. Now, what is the approach of the Natural Resources Management Board to making sure that the ground is kept reasonably clear so that bushfires can't spread?